Jim Olson is regarded as one of the most respected names in the world of custom acoustic guitars, and he remains today one of the leading luthiers in the industry. Jim's legacy is not just in the guitars he builds, but in the lasting impact and inspiration he has had on the art of guitar making and today's emerging generation of luthiers. A self-taught guitar maker, Jim began experimenting with guitar making in the 1970s and created instruments at a small shop in Minnesota. Over time, his attention to detail, focus on tonal quality, playability, and selection of tone woods resulted in an instrument that remains sought after and favored by many notable artists: James Taylor, Phil Keaggy, Paul McCartney, Paul Simon, so many others. Remarkably, despite Jim's success, he remains committed to producing each guitar himself, ensuring that his standards of quality are consistently met. Let's meet Jim. Jim Olson, thank you so much for spending some time with us today at Black Mountain Guitar in Cave Creek, Arizona. And it's a joy to meet you and have a conversation about not only your work, but your background, your legacy. And I'm just really blessed that you would want to do this for us. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, you bet.
Glad to be here.
I've got a few questions, and we've asked some of our subscribers to submit questions that they would like to ask if they had the opportunity to sit in the same room with you. I was wondering, what drew you into guitar making? Is it something in your childhood? And the second part of that question, Jim, is what guitars, vintage, may have influenced your work early on? Was it something you were reaching for?
Well, first off, what drew me to it was I was a tinker, take-apart guy, have to learn how things work, and also enjoyed woodworking. In 9th grade, I won a Future American Craftsman Award for shop class. And I didn't take shop again after that, but I did enjoy making stuff out of wood. And I was also a guitar player. I started when I was 12. Not very good, but we had a band, played at the social hours after the football games, and so I was interested in guitar. Sue, my wife, found a book about building guitars that had just come out and bought it for me. And I tried to build one, and from there it just turned into a hobby out of control, and I just kept going at it. So that's kind of what got me started on it, because it seemed like something that would be the highest point of woodworking and also something people could use, you know, besides just a table which they set stuff on, they can actually create and make music. So it seemed like a really neat thing to want to make. What inspired me was I had Barton D28 Indian that I bought in 1968, my first really good guitar, and so I tried to copy that, of course, like most everybody else does, a dreadnought. You look inside it, and bending the sides was some of the hardest part, but the book helped you get started on it. So that was sort of the inspiration for all this.
And you made a lot of your own tools.
Well, you sort of have to, because
you couldn't just go and buy them.
Yeah, no. How do you bend a side? You know, I mean, you have to make a form, and how do you make a fingerboard, and how do you make an arched fingerboard, and how do you know, all these things require tooling and tools, and so definitely I got into trying to find ways to make parts. Guitars are basically parts, and you make parts, and then you glue them together. So.
What do you think are some of the more overlooked aspects of guitar making that non-luthiers may not really fully appreciate? You put a lot of your background and history and skill into this, and we don't, as guitarists, we don't often think of the things that you think that makes this an instrument sound like it does.
Well, I don't know if they're overlooked, but they're hard to achieve maybe, and that is the guitar has to intonate. You know, it has to have a nice level neck that doesn't buzz. You know, if it doesn't have that, you could have a beautiful looking guitar, but if it doesn't play well, or the action's high, or the frets are uneven. And so I see a lot of guitars from people like myself starting out. When I started out, my guitars certainly weren't that great either. Some of them I'd still like to bury when I see them come back. But people bring me guitars, and honestly, the binding and fit and finish isn't very good, and the finish isn't good, and the neck isn't that good. But if you strum it, it makes a sound that's adequate. If they could just refine those other things, and that's what takes time, I think, is to get a really playable guitar. I think if you got a really playable guitar, the sound will be okay on just about any of the boxes they bring in. Now, of course, there's levels of what okay would be, but so I think the most important is, of course, getting it playable and intonated and the neck to feel good. Yeah, if you can do that, the rest of it can kind of be forgiven, you know.
Tell us a little about your thoughts on voicing. How do you voice an instrument?
That's a tough one because I voiced by basically the same way everybody else does in the beginning. You start out with big fat braces and you start bringing them down, 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 and you fool with how wide the X goes and how big of a bridge plate, and you know, to try to find something you like. But if you listen to what the other people like, you kind of go around in circles because you make a guitar that you're pretty proud of, and the guy comes in and he actually liked that one better, and he thinks that the neck was a little too fat on this one versus that one's thinner. So now you think you need a thinner neck and you need to do what he does, and the next guy comes in and he likes the other one better. So what it basically came down to was I tried to make the guitar that I like. And I don't play heavy-handed. I'm mostly a finger stylist. I had polio in this arm. I'm not a really good strummer, so I liked expressive kind of guitars. So I tried to develop that, and eventually it found favor in the market, so I got locked into doing that repeatedly, sort of. And you either like it or you don't, and I'm fine with that. And I don't try to cater to everybody's needs. I don't really know how to do that.
Be like chasing your tail, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but also I really don't know how, other than to add a little more bass or a little more treble based on the stiffness of the top or something. But to really say I could make a guitar. I had a guy send me a drawing of his hand one time. He traced it and asked me to make a neck to fit it. You know, I mean, it's kind of tough to do.
Yeah.
Phil Keaggy's little tiny hands has a wide neck, you know.
Right,
anyway. So it's kind of like that with sound. It's really hard to know what they're describing or how to make it to it. So I make the guitar that I like, and it's found because of James Taylor and Phil and others. It's a guitar I stick to.
Yeah, that's wonderful. When it comes to building a guitar for a person, an artist who prefers picking versus strumming, what are some of the aspects of that guitar that you try to achieve to address that desire?
Well, honestly, if they're a heavy strummer, I'd say don't buy an SJ cedar top. Get a dreadnought. And then the next thing I'd tell them is probably don't buy a dreadnought from me. Buy it from Martin or Collings, or because they're known for them, you know. And I steer them away from that actually. But you can strum a cedar top SJ, and you can strum it very hard and get by with it if you're skilled. If I get a young kid in and he's going to bang out Neil Young Down by the River, and he's not very good at it on a cedar top guitar, they're so expressive and peripheral that it sort of collapses and gets muddy, and the louder they play, the smaller it sounds and the worse it sounds. So honestly, if they're a heavy-handed player, I recommend them, you know, get a guitar that somebody manufactures for that already, rather than try to have me make it for them.
Yeah.
And fortunately, I'm able to steer people away from my guitars because I have enough demand, you know. Otherwise, I would do anything. You know? Like, sure, I'll make you a guitar with, you know, whatever you need. I can do it. But
I have another question that we were asked. It goes back to the voicing topic. When I've read somewhere about tapping, when you tap an instrument, and there was something I read that you had said that taps well. What does that mean? And what do you look for?
That's true to a point. I mean, you know, like I tap the tops too to decide first off is how high the pitch, how low the pitch, or whatever. That kind of determines how heavy your braces are. But as far as tapping to get notes, I don't. Now, there were people that ascribed to that back, you know, they used to write about how you get to a certain note, but I find that hard to really know the end result of what you're getting, because a thermostat works in the old temperature controllers by two metal strips, and one would expand when it got hotter, bend it over and bend this way. Same thing happens to a top that shrinks and swells with humidity. The brace bends and flexes, kind of like a saw when you play it. They flex and it goes, well, the top changes that note. It doesn't stay the same, you know, and so now you're not only doing that, you've achieved a note on a free plate, you're gluing it down to a guitar, you're putting binding around it, you're putting a bridge on top of it, you know, and then the humidity changes. And so I don't know that you can really determine a note per se by tapping, but you can tell when it's coming alive, kind of.
You're looking for like a zone, kind of a...
Yeah, you just want to hear a nice, good ring, you know, and a lot of people now, you know, use flexing methods to try to achieve a repeatable performance, but I can't honestly tell you that I'm an expert at any of that, but I worked very hard to get a certain weight, shape, and braces, and I kind of know now, based on how stiff or flexible the top is, how far to go down with my sanding on the braces, etc. But the results are always within a parameter, but they're not identical. Every guitar is a little different, but is it this one good, or is that one good, or is this one better? That's what's hard.
So you began building in the 70s?
I started in the early 70s modifying guitars and electric guitars and trying to build them. It wasn't until 1977 that I tried to make it a full-time business. Yeah.
That's almost 50 years.
Almost.
Almost.
I know, scary.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah.
Then what? I mean,
then what?
Do something to celebrate 50 years?
Well, there would probably be a 50th anniversary model if I get there. I made the 45th anniversary models already. I'll wait till 50 and see if we can get there. Lord willing, we'll find out.
So you started in mid-late 70s, and today there are the next generation of builders coming up, doing some incredible work.
Oh my gosh.
What would you have to say, based on your experience back then starting, what are some of the, if you will, mistakes that you made that you would advise other luthiers to either avoid or explore or pursue at this stage in their development?
Well, I think the hardest thing for me when I started out was you couldn't give them away. Today that's a little different, that handmaids are acceptable and they can build a website and get a following, and you can build, you know, 10 guitars and become almost famous for your guitars. I can name a number of folks that are in that camp. Some builders do that start to get known a little bit is they all of a sudden decide they need to make a dreadnought, a classical, an archtop, a flamenco, and now they have all these different models, but truthfully there's only like one of them that's really getting attention and selling. So I think that they maybe should not diversify so much and try to make so many models and so many scale links and so many everything else, hoping to find an audience. You know, just build what you can build, the best that you can build it. And if you like it, there are going to be other people that are going to like it too. Not everybody's going to like it. You know, I mean, I have detractors. I get, you know, people putting them down, but that's fine. Don't get all big-headed if somebody gives you a big compliment, and try not to get totally devastated when you get a bad one.
So stay in your lane.
Yeah, just stay there. People are going to like you and people are going to hate you, and you can't control that, you know, and you just do it the best you can do. And fortunately, for me, it's worked. But other than that, the other thing is, I have people call me because they're not selling them or something, but just keep making them, you know, whatever it takes. You got to build more of them. And so don't get so discouraged that you give up. You know, if you can have another piece of wood, keep at it, you know, just keep at it. Yeah.
One of the things that we read about and are aware of is the shortage or diminishing supply of some incredible tone woods. I've got guitars made in the 30s that are just unbelievable, and that's going away. What other than carbon, what are there some of the other alternatives that
You know,
you're hearing that people are
amazingly,
using?
right now, almost every established guitar maker that I know of has more wood than they can use because they've accumulated it over the years. But it's true, these species are getting harder to get. Also, the prices have gone up so high. Remember when there was no oil left in the world back during the oil shortage and the
Right.
gas lines?
Yeah,
and,
yeah, yeah.
You know, we're all out of oil. Well, once the price got high enough, there was enough oil again, you know. But
Surprise,
but it
surprise.
is true that the trees are diminishing and the rules and regulations of cutting them down. But I think some of the hardest things would be like ebony, you know, and Taylor, of course, has pioneered the striped ebony and using trees that don't have the blackness that most people think you have to have, and you know, but they're also planting trees like crazy, you know, in Hawaii and in ebony and you know koa wood and there are also so many alternative woods that are still very in supply that you know I think we're going to have woods for quite a while if we you know don't get foolish. But most builders I know, like myself, I accumulated woods back when, and you also want them in your shop a good 5 years before you build out of them anyway, so they really acclimate to the lowest humidity you can and then bring them back
Did
up.
you have a sense that that was going to become unavailable, so you accumulated, or it's just a result
Well,
of
you
buying
know,
so much?
you always think if you get an extra dime and you got somebody presenting you with something, you better snag it, you
Yeah.
know. So, and
Yeah.
I know builders right now that are as old as me, and they got more wood and they're still buying it, you know, because it's a disease. It's called WAS, wood acquisition syndrome. Kind of like the guitar.
Yeah,
I mean,
we-
seriously,
yeah,
I
yeah.
can't pass up a good piece of wood today almost, and I know I can't use it, but you think, well, you can sell it when you retire.
That's true.
It's an investment.
It's like a hedge fund, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it is getting more problematic. Cedar is getting really hard to get right now, too.
Really?
Yeah, you wouldn't think so, but it is.
How much of your craft today relies upon traditional methods versus modern technology and tools? And do you feel one is more essential to the process than the other?
I still use a dovetail, which is probably antiquated by today's bolt-on
What
methods,
does that mean
you know.
for its average person?
Well, that means that most of them are going to bolt-on necks, you know, easily to remove and easier to reset. And Martin still has stuck with dovetails on the majority of their guitars. And I started out that way and I just stuck with it, maybe to my detriment, I don't know, you know, but
Because at the time,
the time if you
intensive.
need to take a
Yeah.
neck off, you know.
Yeah.
But that's very doable if you get good at it. It's not a major thing. Otherwise, we're making parts again, you know. So if you're going to make a bridge, you know, a pretty simple looking little thing with holes in it and slots, I mean, you can muscle your way through a bridge, but if you can get a machine or a jig or a fixture that'll allow you to use a router, you know, and use it with your hands, or you use a CNC machine, which is a router, but you don't use your hands, you know, I mean, it's to your advantage. So you're always trying to find ways to make the parts quicker, but better.
But
You don't want to go quicker and worse.
yeah,
But most of these jigs and fixtures make them precise, repeatable, and quicker. It doesn't take as long, and so I'm always trying to find that in my work. You know, there are people say I just enjoy carving a neck. Well, I did too till I carved 800 of them and had major rotator cuff surgery, and I had polio in this arm, and I still can't get this arm above my head hardly, and this arm. You know, when you get to that point, you go like, I can't do this anymore. So that's where these machines are incredible, and why not take advantage of them?
was that a big leap for you?
Pardon?
Was that a big leap for you to move?
Oh, very big
into,
leap. My
say,
first
a CNC
Fadal
machine?
cost $53,000 used. Then you had to buy a $6,500 right angle head that turned this motion and that motion to saw frets and make kerfing. So, and they brought in this $10,000 machine where I had to buy a $12,500 program and learn how to draw in it, and so you know. But it's gotten much easier to get into CNC now. That was back when, you know. Now they have smaller machines and the software is easier. And but I mean, it's like if you're going to plant a tree, you can dig a big hole and spend weeks, you know, digging it out and trying, or you can get one of the big machines and you pull the tree out and you go
Right.
plant it. Now people say, well, you got a CNC, your machine, your prices should come way down. You know, you don't have. Well, what about all the expense of that big thing that dug the tree out? You know what I mean? What about the expense of all? That's why it's not for the faint of heart or the financially challenged. I mean, you have to put money into it to use these things, but once you have them, it's a great advantage. Yeah. I don't know if I explained that well, but that's...
It was good.
Well, anyway, I'll tell you what, if it
Yeah.
wasn't for the CNC machine, I couldn't still be making guitars. It's just such a great tool, but it comes with...
Did you resist that? Did you resist that?
In the beginning, like people said, you're getting a Fidal, well, you're going to hide that in the back somewhere where people can't see it, right? I mean, that's how it was back then.
Wow.
You know, it's like, whoa.
Yeah.
And there are people now that I still talk to, maybe I shouldn't say this, but they talk about publicly they don't like CNC, but on the other hand, they're asking me how to get into it. So you know, people still are a little wanting to be the old, I did it all with a pocket knife, you know?
Yeah, right. Well, you haven't thought of?
I hit the jackpot, though, you know, when in 1989,
How's that?
James Taylor started playing my guitars. I mean, there isn't anybody on the planet, I don't think, that could have brought the attention to me like he did. And not only did he buy them, he paid me for them, he continued to play them all these years. So, you know, and that's just something you can't buy. You know, I mean, I couldn't have paid him to do it if he didn't. So anyway, that's why I got so fortunate.
Well, the artist that really inspired me was Phil Keaggy.
A lot of people
I
say
heard
that.
years ago when he acquired his Olson, he said, Jim, hey, Phil's playing Olson guitars. And really, what's that? You know, we started looking around trying to find them. And I think, I don't know if I went online back then, but we were very intrigued by that whole thing. And I love Phil as a person and an artist, and anything that he has.
He's a great friend. Yep, we brought him down to Ed's here. We're in Ed's Cave Creek Guitar Shop here a couple of years ago, and he comes down and stays. Just a wonderful guy. But yeah, James Taylor would not be playing my guitar if it wasn't for Phil.
Really?
Yeah, and I'll try to tell you why that was. But it takes a while, so I'll do it quickly. Do we have time?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Go for it.
So Phil started playing my guitar, which was just unbelievable to me. He was the best guitar player on the planet as far as I was concerned, and he was a part of my faith too, and so I just loved Phil to death. Well, in 1989, when I tried to show a guitar to James Taylor, there was a concert going on in our town called Concert for the Environment. I called the promoters, and I said, is it any way possibly that I could bring a guitar down and show James, do you think? And she said, oh, I'm sorry, we can't do that. We don't have insurance. And, you know, I go, I'm so sorry. I should have never asked. What a fool. You know, I'm embarrassed. And I just thought I'd try. Because I had read where James Taylor said in Guitar Maker magazine just the week before when I was reading it, two things he admired, a boat builder and a guitar maker. So I thought,
oh yeah, that's a good thing.
Anyway, I'm about to hang up, and she says, you're not the person that makes Phil Keaggy's guitars, are you? And I said, well, actually I am. And she said, oh my gosh, we love Phil. We just saw him recently, you know. She said, let me call Peter Asher and see what he thinks about it. So, because Peter was managing him at the time. So she called back about, you know, a minute and a half later and said, oh, they'd love to see it. Bring it down. Just leave it with the concierge. And all I put in there was a note that said, if you have any interest, please call me, and my name. I didn't make a big plea. I didn't do anything. I had my shop in the church at that time, a large commercial building we bought, and I was down in the basement of the church, but it wasn't really a church. It used to be a bowling alley and drinking stead. Well, anyway, I had to clean the toilets because that was part of my duty in the church, to have my rent for free down there. I had a portable phone with me, and it was James Taylor calling the Monday after the concert. And he said, I said, Olson Guitars, and he said, this is a James Taylor calling. Is Jim there, please? And I said, this is Jim. Oh, excuse me. But anyway, he said they had been playing the guitar all week, and they were quite taken by it.
Wow.
The one that I showed him was a cutaway. He said he doesn't use a cutaway. Why did you bring a cutaway? Just asking me. And I said, well, it's the only one I had to show you. And he said, well, maybe I could put a plastic cobweb up there. Which I thought was rather comical.
Funny. That's funny.
Anyway, it ended up he bought that one and ordered 2 others, and has been playing them ever since. So that was a long story for you, but anyway, Phil Keaggy is what started that, because honestly, without my good buddy Phil and his connection to the lady that was putting on the concert, James Taylor might have never gotten my guitars. So,
I have another question. It might be it's a little personal side, but how has your faith in your family been part of your journey and your success and your development of your craft?
Well, my faith played a huge part. I gave my life to the Lord in 1980. I came out of the hippie movement. I ate acid hundreds of times. I even did foolish stuff like tried heroin and got hepatitis C, and I got saved and got out of that. But my wife, even more than that. In fact, when I speak, or used to speak, I try not to do anymore, I would go to these guitar conventions and I'd have to stand in front of these people, and I'd start out with 2 things. The first one was I'd say, people who go bald in front, they're the ones that think a lot, and the people who go bald in back, they're the people that know a lot. This is proven. And then I'd say, and people who go bald all over like me, we think we know a lot. So that would break the ice a little bit. And then I'd say, people always ask me, what is one of the most important things I would need if I'm going to be a guitar maker? And I say, well, you don't have to have one of these, but if you do, it better be a really, really good one. And then I'd show a picture of my wife, because without her, could have never done it. And there are really, really dark times in life for everybody. I don't care if you gave your life to the Lord or not, but the Lord will help you through it. And that's been incredible for me, because we had a lot of dark times. It wasn't all gravy. I was in the business 10 years before I ever made a profit. But that's a long story too, but we don't need to go there.
You just kept going.
Just kept going.
You're committed to
yes.
it. Did you feel a sense of calling to that? Did you feel like, spiritually you were called to do that? Do you have a sense of a vision or a gift?
You have free will and a free choice to do anything, but when you look back at it, it's almost like you didn't. Your life just happened to you, and you made the choices every day, but it's like you had no choices. This is kind of what you did. And very definitely do I feel like I was supposed to do this, and I was so fortunate to be able to do this. But it came at a price. It wasn't easy. Family, you rarely see them, and because you're always in the shop, 7 days a week and stuff. Even with all the church stuff, we were still always, every spare moment you devote to it. But every guitar maker will tell you that, if they're trying to make, or musician.
Right.
Musicians give up a lot.
We do.
Leo Kottke used to say to me, well, at least your kids know where you are. Because he's always on the road.
Right.
And I tell him how hard I work. He goes, well, at least they know where you are. You're out in your shop. You go in for lunch. I'm gone on the road, So everybody gives up something for their dream. Yeah.
And that's something
not unique. I mean, not by any stretch. But you do have to give it up and work hard to achieve, or it's not going to happen. Or at least you can't sustain it,
It's true.
Yep.
Jim, thank you so much.
Oh, you bet.
It's been your graciousness of being here and giving us your time. It means a lot to me, and I mean, a lot of people that will be tuning into this episode are grateful for, your craft, for you as a person and an artist.
I'm very thankful that I have the opportunity to do it, and thank you, Sarah.
You're welcome.
Yep.
My pleasure.
And to Ed for letting us use this shop.
Word.
Absolutely. And I think this is
there it is.
Henry Kohler's guitar, my friend here. So he brought it down because I don't have one with me. So very good. All right. Thank you, Sarah.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Thanks so much. Yeah, you bet.